Imagine being rejected by the very company that would eventually pay you $19 billion just to buy the app you built. In 2009, Jan Koum walked out of Facebook's office as an unemployed failure. 5 years later, he walked back in as a billionaire. This is the story of how an immigrant who once stood in line for food stamps built the most valuable messaging empire in history, and why he signed the most expensive contract in tech history in the most unexpected place imaginable. This is the rise from zero. August 3rd, 2009, a 33-year-old unemployed programmer walks out of Facebook headquarters. He had just applied for a job, a standard mid-level engineering position. He wasn't angry. He was just another guy in Silicon Valley who didn't make the cut. Facebook, a company rapidly approaching 500 million users, looked at his resume, looked at his experience, and decided he simply wasn't good enough. Fast forward exactly 5 years. That same company, the one that rejected him, is practically begging him for a meeting, but they aren't offering him a job this time. They are offering him $19 billion. It remains one of the largest tech acquisitions in human history, the ultimate poetic justice. But this isn't just a story about a guy who got rich despite the company that rejected him, because long before he was a billionaire, long before he held the world's communication in the palm of his hand, he was a boy standing in the freezing cold, just hoping his family would survive the winter. To understand the magnitude of this rise, we have to go back to absolute zero. The year is 1992. The Soviet Union has just collapsed, leaving behind a fractured, chaotic landscape. In a small village outside Kiev, Ukraine, a 16-year-old boy named Jan Koum is packing his entire life into a few small suitcases. Life here is unimaginably hard. The Koum family house has no hot water. To talk to anyone on the phone, they have to walk down the street, constantly looking over their shoulders, terrified that the secret police are listening to their conversations. In this environment, privacy isn't a luxury. It's a matter of life and death. The political instability and rising anti-Semitism make it clear to Jan's mother, if they stay, they have no future. So she makes the agonizing decision to leave her husband behind, grab her teenage son, and flee to the United States. They land in Mountain View, California. Today, it's the glittering heart of Silicon Valley, home to Google. But for Jan and his mother, it was just a place where they could barely afford a small 2-bedroom apartment through a government assistance program. The American dream didn't start with garage startup for January. It started with a mop to keep the lights on. Jan took a job sweeping floors at a local grocery store. His mother, who had been a respected professional in Ukraine, took on babysitting jobs. But it wasn't enough. To survive, they had to rely on food stamps. Every week, Jan would walk to a small, nondescript government welfare office. He would stand in line for hours, clutching government-issued coupons, just to get a bag of groceries. The humiliation was heavy, but the tragedy was just beginning. Shortly after arriving in the U.S., Jan's mother was diagnosed with cancer. Now, they weren't just fighting poverty. They were fighting for her life. The medical bills piled up. The disability checks barely covered the rent. Jan watched the strongest person he knew wither away. He realized that no one was coming to save them. If he wanted to pull his family out of this darkness, he had to teach himself how to fight. He didn't have money for elite tutors or fancy boot camps. Instead, Jan went to a local used bookstore. He bought thick, heavy manuals on computer networking and server infrastructure. He read them cover to cover. When he was done, he returned them to the store to get his money back, just so he could afford to buy the next one. He was literally hacking his own education. By the time he enrolled at San Jose State University, he was already light years ahead of curriculum. He joined a hacker group called W00W00, infiltrating servers, breaking things, and learning how the internet was truly wired. His raw, self-taught talent caught the eye of a massive company, Ernst & Young, who hired him as security tester. It was here, during a routine security audit, that Jan met a guy who would change his life forever. His name was Brian Acton. Acton was everything Jan wasn't, an optimistic, outgoing American who saw past Jan's blunt, no-nonsense Eastern European exterior. The two bonded instantly. When Acton left to work for a booming internet giant called Yahoo, He pulled Jan right in with him. For the first time in his life, Jan wasn't poor. He was making real money. He bought a car. He had stability. But then the anchor of his life was ripped away. In 2000, his mother lost her battle with cancer. His father had already passed away a few years earlier in Ukraine. Jan Koum, the boy who crossed the world to find a better life, was now entirely alone. No family, no safety net. The grief hit him hard. He hated the corporate politics at Yahoo. He hated the ad they were forcing onto user screens. So, in 2007, he and Brian Acton both quit. They packed their bags and traveled around South America, playing ultimate frisbee, trying to figure out what they wanted to do with their lives. But savings don't last forever. By 2009, reality knocked on the door. They needed jobs. They both applied to Twitter. Rejected. They both applied to Facebook. Rejected. Jan was 33, unemployed, grieving, and rejected by the very industry he helped build. He was right back at zero. But then, in January 2009, Jan bought an iPhone. It was an early model, clunky by today's standards. But when he looked at the newly launched App Store, he didn't just see games and gimmicks. He saw a gold mine. He realized that soon, everyone in the world was going to have a smartphone in their pocket. He had an idea. What if your phone's address book could tell you what your contacts were doing? No messaging, just a status update next to their name. A way to know if they were on a call, or busy, or free to talk. He wanted a name that sounded like, "What's up?" He called it WhatsApp. He wrote the code entirely by himself. But there was a massive problem. The app was terrible. It crashed constantly. Nobody downloaded it. The few friends who did stopped using it after a week. Month after month, Jan bled through his savings. Defeated, exhausted, and feeling like a failure once again, Jan sat down with Brian Acton and told him he was giving up. He was going to start looking for a job again. Acton looked at him across the table and said, "You'd be an idiot to quit now. Give it a few more months." That single sentence saved WhatsApp. Weeks later, Apple introduced a tiny software update that changed the trajectory of the internet. Push notifications. Suddenly, when a user changed their status on WhatsApp to "I'm at the gym," their friends got a notification. Without realizing it, Jan had accidentally created an instant messaging service. Users started messaging each other through the statuses. The engagement went through the roof. Jan quickly released WhatsApp 2.0 with a dedicated messaging component. It exploded. Hundreds of thousands of downloads. They had no marketing budget. They ran zero advertisements. In fact, Jan hated advertising. He remembered the secret police in Ukraine. He believed communication should be private, encrypted, and ad-free. The product was just so purely useful that the world couldn't ignore it. Brian Acton officially joined, bringing in seed funding from old Yahoo friends. They worked out of a small, unmarked building. No ping-pong tables, no fancy Silicon Valley perks. Just raw, unrelenting focus. While competitors were spending millions on user acquisition, WhatsApp was gaining 1 million new users every single day, purely through word of mouth. It became the default way the planet communicated. By 2014, WhatsApp had over 400 million active users. The tech giants were terrified. Google tried to buy them. But then, Mark Zuckerberg invited Jan over for dinner. Facebook, the company that had outright rejected Jan 5 years earlier, realized that this immigrant who built an app with zero marketing was about to make their entire messaging platform obsolete. Zuckerberg didn't negotiate small. He offered $19 billion. It was a number so large it defied logic. When it came time to sign the final paperwork, the billionaire investors and lawyers expected to do it in a high-rise boardroom overlooking the San Francisco Bay. But Jan Koum said no. He told Brian Acton and the venture capitalist team to meet him at an abandoned, graffiti-covered building a few blocks from the train station in Mountain View. They stood outside the locked, rusted doors. Jan signed a $19 billion contract right there on the street. Why there? Because that abandoned building used to be the North County Social Services office. It was the exact same door where, decades earlier, a cold, hungry, terrified teenage immigrant used to stand in line, waiting for food stamps just to keep his dying mother alive. Jan Koum didn't just build an app. He built a bridge from the absolute bottom of society to the very pinnacle of global success. He took rejection, grief, and poverty and forged them into something the whole world uses every single day. He is the ultimate reminder that where you start doesn't dictate where you finish, and that sometimes the greatest empires are built by those who know exactly what it pays.